I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me.
What does it mean Messiah matters?
It means apart from him, we can do nothing. It means he is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeshua is the only way of salvation. He is everything. We have to have the Tanakh to know the Messiah.
But we have to have the Messiah to know the Tanakh. Without Messiah, we have nothing.
Basically, it's all about the Messiah. It's Wednesday, August 22nd. This is Messiah Matters, number 231. Still getting emails from Apple fanatics. My name is Caleb Hagg. And with me, the man whose mind is already sunbathing in the Caribbean, Rob Van Hoff. What up, buddy? How's it going, man?
It's going well.
So I said
the air here has been crazy. I know it's been crazy for you too. We were like over 300 like the other day in terms of like, it was like hazardous. They're like, don't go out of your house.
Yeah, we keep getting those.
My wife's like, yeah, we're worse than, what was it? New Delhi and Beijing added together or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But this is not industrial pollution. This is just smoke from forest fires.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Canada. Blame Canada.
Boy, yeah. Up and, you have a lot of vacationers that like to go up and hike and see the beauty of like Banff, up there. And that's a hot spot. It's totally smoked out.
You just froze on me. I wonder why. Hang on just a sec. Let's see what we can do here. Get Rob back. Rob is frozen. Well, that's no good. Oh, there you go. Okay, good.
I'm back. Okay.
So last week I mentioned that I got myself a new phone. I explained that my new phone was a Android. Rob keeps freezing. I'm not sure why. So Apple enthusiasts have been just nonstop emailing me on why they think that
you're crazy,
I'm
or
totally
are you betrayed?
Yes, exactly. Now, keep in mind, I still have an Apple TV, an Apple computer, an Apple laptop computer, and a Apple tablet. But apparently, I have gone against the Apple people by switching phones. Which, by the way, I have to admit, I really like. Got myself the Android S8, Samsung S8. It's
nice.
It's a beautiful thing. Now, I will admit there's some annoyances, right? But it is what it is. So you haters can hate all you want. That's fine. Okay, well, Rob leaves for Trinidad tomorrow, and we're excited for you, man. Are you just pumped or what? Do you have any downtime? Do you know?
Yeah, Monday you're gonna have a little bit of downtime.
So what? You're going to teach the whole time, and then what?
Yeah, the conference is 3 days, so it's Friday, Shabbat, and Sunday, and then Monday is some downtime, hanging with the hosts there, and then hopefully seeing a little bit of the country. I know that there looks like there's some heavy storm weather the front side of the week, so I'm hoping that'll kind of be done with for a little bit. But
I've traveled with Rob multiple times. I've traveled with him to ETS and SBL, and Rob is a delicate flower when he travels. He gets burnt out very easily and quickly. He needs a lot of nap time, and so I'm excited for you, but I'm also a little nervous for you because when you're teaching all day long, and then people are coming up to you and asking questions, wanting to talk and everything. You're looking at like 12, 14-hour days.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
You got enough emergency.
SBL has its own stresses.
That's true. I'll give you that.
Especially when you're doing like that feels like a little bit like an iron furnace. And so,
I will admit that going to ETS and SBL is a little different. It's like putting your mouth on a fire hose, and then having somebody just pull all the way back on the
right. And this is different in that you have a nice hospitality that has created a space, and you know what I mean. And so you're going to spend time with believers, to be in the Word, and that's a different tone than going. The SBL can be kind of hostile. I've been to see papers where it's an academic guy but he doesn't believe the Bible's the Word of God, but let's say he's into the language or archaeology or something like that, and
literary form. He treats
those,
it like
those I
Shakespeare.
try to learn from those people. See what I can pick up, but it's not a what do you call it? It's not a space you would hang out for a long time.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, good. Yeah, I will make sure that I have.
Just remember to press record on before all of your sessions. That's the only thing I ask. Record. Make sure watch the numbers go up. That's all I need.
I've got extra batteries. I've got all the things. Yeah,
good. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's our 231st show.
Woot woot.
And before we get into it, let's thank some people. First of all, as always, this show, Messiah Matters, is brought to you by TorahResource.com. Torah Resource is a wonderful place to find all sorts of great resources. And by the way, for those who need resources that you don't find on our site, give me a shout out. You can email me or whatever. I sent Evelyn today. I sent her a chapter out of my dad's book on 10 persistent questions. If you have things like that you're looking for, that you need help with, definitely give us a call, and we'd be happy to help you. We are here to help and here to equip the body of the Messiah. And so check it out. And for those who don't know, we have a radio station. Our radio station plays 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's right. Go to TorahResource.com or simply put in trradio.com and it'll take you straight to our radio station. Okay. And then you can give us a comment on our comment line, 253-465-3205. I'll give it to you one more time. Get your pencil ready. It's 253-465-3205. We do listen to every single message, and we don't answer the phone, so you can call in and tell us what horrible people we are, or how great you think we are, or how you think we're wrong, or whatever it may be. You can also send us emails, chegg@TorahResource.com. It's chegg@TorahResource.com. And this show would not be made possible without the generous support of our producers. We have executive producers and associate producers. Somebody emailed me. They were a little confused on associate and executive producers. First of all, associate and executive producers is not a reoccurring donation. So we have supporters that donate at like $5 and up every single month. And for those people, I mean, they are the legs and the foundation of this show. Our producers, now some of our producers are repeat offenders, and we thank them for that. But a producership is purchased once every 3 months, not once a month, and you have to go back and purchase it every 3 months. And so it's not like you give us money every single 3 months or anything like that. You go and you actually purchase a producership. And if you'd like to do that, you can find all that information on TorahResource.com/Messiah-Matters. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into it. We have a full show today, and then actually we've had several comments recently asking us to talk on a Greek mindset versus a Hebrew mindset. We've decided to punt that to 2 weeks from today, and the reason being that we are actually going to be we're taking a week off. And here's the other thing. I didn't even think about this. There's another week that I'm going to have off. We'll figure something out. We'll do something for that week. My family's actually taking a vacation in the month of September, right smack dab in between the festivals. But next week we're actually taking off, and so we will be off next week. But then the week after that, we will be back, and we will talk about a Hebrew mindset versus a Greek mindset and what we think about that and all those kind of things. If you'd like to preempt that show and know more than we know about this subject, you can go to TorahResource.com and look for my father's teaching on this subject. I believe it's 6 lectures, and it's called My Big Fat Greek Mindset. And so, yeah, but today we've decided to do something and basically look at our inbox. And so a lot of these come from people asking questions, not, I think maybe all of them actually. Okay. First, covenant. Now this is an interesting one. And I didn't write down the person's name. I apologize to whoever gave this question. They say, I have a question about Exodus 31:12 through 17. Can you help me to understand why the Sabbath is a sign of the Sinai covenant? Is this something you can discuss on Messiah Matters? Well, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I should let me pull up that verse.
Let's give the reference one more time for people who are looking in their Bibles. It is Exodus 31:12 through 17. I'm going to read out of the ESV. And it says this, and the Lord said to Moses, you are to speak to the people of Israel and say, above all, you shall keep the Sabbaths. For this is the sign between me and throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord, that I, the Lord, sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days shall the work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. Therefore, the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a covenant forever. It is a sign forever between me and the people of Israel that in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. So the initial thought that I have from this is actually what you said when we kind of discussed this prior, which is that this is not a sign of the Sinai covenant. Right?
Well, it's the Shabbat first and foremost is a memorial from creation. Like who created this whole world?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the core piece. And it is given to Israel in the wilderness ahead of the 10 Commandments, right? They get the Shabbat and the manna. If you go back to after the deliverance from Egypt, they get 2 gifts. They get the gift of manna.
Right.
It says the Lord gave them manna and the Lord gave them the Shabbat. So the verb natan is used in both these cases. And if you remember, they're hooked together because how is the manna and the Shabbat hooked together? That they were only to gather manna for 1 day, and they were not to go on the Shabbat and gather manna.
Right.
And if they tried to store manna over 1 day, it would get all gross. Except by miracle, not only was the manna a miracle, but there was an extra miracle in that on the preparation day, people could gather an extra day's worth of manna and it would not go gross.
Right.
And there would not be any on the Shabbat. So the giving of the Shabbat and the giving of the manna point back to the creation, obviously, and God's provision for his people, but God's expectation that his people recognize his own holiness and then what he sanctifies. He sanctified the Shabbat, and as it says in verse 13, Ani Adonai Mekadishchem, I am the one who I sanctify you all, meaning I am the one who sanctifies Israel. So
I think ultimately, I think it is it's the sign of salvation.
Well, sure, because Isaiah 56, the very passage Yeshua quotes, it's the scripture that's in Yeshua's heart while he's angrily knocking over these money changing tables, is this whole passage of, now we just hear it, he says, this shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. But what's the context of that passage from Isaiah is people from other nations coming and clinging to Adonai and keeping and not profaning his Shabbat, it says, and that their worship will be acceptable to me.
I think that I think the two things that it I agree with you, but the two things that it represents are, you have creation, where the garden is created, and man and the Holy One dwell together in unity on the earth. And then the other thing it represents is that now sin has come between man and God. Mm-hmm. The garden is no more. But the Exodus is a sign of salvation. In other words, bringing man back into the relationship with the Holy One again. Right. And this is how,
all on the promise, because if we talk about oaths and covenants, promise to Abraham. Remember, it wasn't Israel in Egypt didn't do anything special that God said, those people are having a hard time. Maybe I should intervene.
Right.
No, because there were other people, slaves at the time in the world, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Why did he deliver them? Well, it had nothing to do with them in terms of their work right there or their merit. It had to do with his own promise that he'd made generations prior to Abraham.
Exactly.
He told Abraham, and we know that from Genesis 15, right? He says, your offspring will become slaves, but I will bring them back. He makes a promise, an oath to Abraham that he's going to do this. And this is even before Ishmael's born. This is before Isaac's born. Abraham's given this promise, and it's the same chapter where we learn Abraham trusted the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness.
I saw a video this morning. This is totally off subject. I saw a video this morning as I was kind of browsing, and
you can Google it.
It was a teacher that I'm actually aware of. For some reason his name is escaping me right now. Dr. Clark. Anyway, he was talking about genocide. And he had a really interesting take that I'd never heard before. He said that God didn't just tell Israel to go and slaughter people. No, instead, God held the people in Egypt while the nations that were in Canaan continued to get worse and worse and worse. And
right, that's in Genesis 15 also. He
right,
says, yeah.
and then he uses Israel as a means to enact his judgment against these people, just as later Babylonia and other people are used to enact God's judgment against Israel. A very interesting take. I agree. I think I agree with him. I think it's but it just shows God's providence, his sovereignty all the way around for every single situation and every single reason. In other words, why was Israel in Egypt for 400 years plus? Well, because of his enacting judgment on the nations that were in Canaan at the time.
And by God's wisdom, he created man. He knows how we remember. He knows how we need to repeat things over and over and over again, how forgetful we are, how our hearts go astray. So the very imprinting in the calendar observance is a marked day every week where we remember we are not slaves, back to the redemption theme, that we're children of the creator of heaven and earth.
Right.
And that's our identity.
Right.
Our identity is in the one who redeemed us and who's also the one who created the whole world. And so whereas other people run about day after day after day, working, stressed out, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? They're in an endless cycle. They need deliverance from that. That's a cycle of evil. That's fruit of the, that's the wages of sin is death, right? People who have not come to see the truth of who the creator is, and so all these things are tied together. So it's tough to say the Shabbat is a sign of the Sinai covenant, because it's
well, it doesn't say that
here. It just says it's a sign, Beni uvein Bnei Israel.
Well,
it's
hang on, just a
sign
second.
between me and
it says it's a sign
forever.
But it calls the Sabbath itself a covenant, right? I'm not looking at the Hebrew.
It says it's an oat. Yeah, it's a brit olam. It's a perpetual brit. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the Sabbath. Et HaShabbat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the Sabbath is the covenant itself. Anyway, Helen in the chat room says, who are the Amorites? Because actually Paul, before that, he says the time of the Amorites are not full yet.
Right. That's a good verse there from 15.
Right. And so basically God is holding Israel in Egypt until the Amorites were in Canaan at the time. What this made me think of is Ariel Berkowitz's class at Torah Resource Institute on peoples of the ancient Near East. It's a great class, and he goes through the Amorites and talks about the Amorites. That made me remember that I should tell everyone right now, Torah Resource Institute, the fall quarter is open for registration. I would encourage everyone. You don't have to be in a program or anything. You can just take single classes at a time. I'd encourage everyone to take a class. We got some really good classes, and Rob's teaching Greek and Aramaic and rabbinic Judaisms. That's a real
Judaism in the first century.
Judaism's in the first. I'm sorry, Judaism's in the first century. That is a really fun course. I've taken it myself, and then my father's teaching a slew of courses as well. So is Gary Springer. I would encourage everyone to go to TorahResource.com and check out the classes. You can look at them under Institute. Take some classes with us. It's fun. Okay, so I hope that answers the question on Exodus 31:12-17.
Good question.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's move on. We're going to go to vows and oaths. I'm kind of out. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just going to punt this one right over to you because I don't. You've done more research on this than I have, but I will read the person's question so that at least I'm part of the conversation. Vows and oaths, what's the difference? Vows, Numbers 30. How does the vow of a male differ from that of a female? Why can a father or husband annul the vow of his daughter or wife? Do the vows of sons in their father's house stand on their own, or can the father annul those also? Do you want me to stop, or do you want to?
Wow, that's getting into it. Good. These are all good questions. A lot of this comes from like Numbers 30, probably. I would imagine the idea of an oath and a vow. And the rabbis have they have tractates on nedarim, or vows, right?
Right.
Or shavuot is vow oaths. So. It's a good question. The way I like it in terms of an outline, how to understand the dynamics, I want to set apart the idea of, or let me do a short answer for the authority. Like, for example, Numbers 30. I think it's the same reason why the Lord, after Eve ate the fruit and then she gave to Adam and he ate, the Lord doesn't come and address Eve. The Lord comes and says to Adam, where are you?
So authority structures.
Yeah. So it has to do with that, and that's by God's design.
That's one of my.
Adam was responsible.
That's one of my. There's a couple of places in the Torah where
he was accountable. Like he didn't demonstrate responsibility at that time, but he was accountable.
There's a couple of places in the Torah where we really see, and this is off track. I'm sorry, but this is a rabbit trail where we really see God's humor, and maybe even Moses' humor in the way that he writes it, but. In Genesis, the passage that you're talking about is one of them. And then actually, when we were
because God knows the answer.
Well, no, because it's the same kind of thing in both passages. We read this in Ontario on Shabbat, but in the first one in Genesis, he says, well, I'm paraphrasing. What have you done? Did you eat the fruit? And he says, oh, the woman that you gave me.
Yeah, right.
You gave her to me. She gave me the fruit.
Yeah, and blame. That's one of the first moves that a sly
and then in Deuteronomy,
sneaky person.
Well, no, but God does it too. This is one of my favorite passages in all of the Torah. Right, Moses comes down off the mountain. And
the same thing.
He smashes the tablets and everything. And God, the whole time, he's been like, "I'm the one who brought you out from Egypt. I'm the one. Remember that I'm the Lord who brought you out from Egypt." And then Moses gets in trouble, kind of, right? And he comes up and he's pleading with the Lord, and he's like, the people that you brought out from Egypt. No longer is it God who brings, oh man, it's so good.
Yeah,
anyway,
good
okay. I'm off on a rabbit trail. Go ahead. Keep going with vows and oaths.
Okay, well, so what oaths and vows? Because what's the difference? There's a difference, right? There's a different word for them. They both have to do with they bring God's name into some sort of utterance, right? That's true for both of them. Like you're invoking the name of God in a statement. And now an oath is going to be one of two basic kinds. You're either making an assertion about something. For example, let's say you were called to testify by a court. Okay. You say, I'm going to tell the truth, right? That's an oath. You're just saying, you're asserting something. Or an oath could be a promise to do something in the future. Caleb, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, next year. And then but remember, there's an invocation of God's name to like, I mean it. I'm all in.
I'll do it. Yeah.
God himself can hold me accountable, right? So that's what an oath is. That's why it's important when in Hebrews it says that the Lord had to swear by himself. He couldn't swear by anyone greater when he promised Abraham, right? And that's back to Genesis 15, by the way. It says, and the Lord swore. He made an oath.
Right.
That means it's a covenant. It's called a brit. It's called an oath, and it's called a promise. And this is real in the forefront because Galatians Paul is just making this so crystal clear that the promise to Abraham it's something God made by an oath. He made a covenant, and it's not, you can't come later and modify and pretend that that's not there anymore, right? That's an important piece. Anyway, so that's an oath. A vow, so a covenant is a kind of oath. A brit is a kind of oath. A vow, a neder in Hebrew, has a conditional element. It's the same thing as an oath, right? You're bringing in God's name, but you have a conditional. Caleb, or to God, if you
do this, I'll do that.
Do this, then I'll do that, right?
Right.
And so that's what's being addressed in Numbers 30, is a conditional utterance that invokes God's name. If this, and this happens, then I promise to do this, and this. Because if the apodosis, that is the first thing, it never happens, then the person's never obligated to the thing, right? When pigs fly, I will, or like there were people, if Donald Trump wins the presidency, I'm moving to Canada or whatever. Right. Well, those were like, if there were people who, let's say they invoked like God's name and said that, they would then, when in fact the first thing happens, then they now are accountable before God for this other thing. Right. Now, the problem is, and this gets into the later rabbis, because we know from the apostolic writings, like in James, I pulled up James 5, he says, above all, my brethren, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but yet let your yes be yes and your no be no, that you may not fall under judgment. And he's just, where did he learn that? Yeshua in the Gospels said, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. Right. So this idea of being careful with our speech and what kind of things we utter is really important in the Bible. But the later rabbis then what happens if someone utters a vow and then something happens and they're like, and then they learn later, if I would have only known, can we get out of a vow that I've made? And that's what, if you've ever heard, some of you maybe for Yom Kippur, there's part, and we're coming into that season, part of the liturgy called Kol Nidre, which is right. Aramaic for Kol Nedarim, all vows. And the idea is is a person searching their heart, seeking, did I utter any kind of vow that then I'm accountable to God for failing to fulfill my obligation? Because if so, that's a judgment. And so the Kol Nidre traditional liturgical piece there for Yom Kippur pertains to kind of scouring through and asking God to release from those obligations, and under the idea that they were made under duress, that they weren't legally binding. Right. In other words, if I really would have known that this was going to happen, I would have never made that vow, or if I knew this other piece of information that was withheld from me. So, or if that guy pressured me and so I made the vow. So those kinds of things then create a legal way of wiggle room to say, well, there's a loophole here. Maybe you thought you uttered a vow when in fact it never was a vow. So you're off the hook.
So there's someone in the chat room asked this question. Can you talk about the Nazirite vow? Why did people make them? I think that this is a question that can't actually be answered, because I think that there were multiple reasons why a person would take a Nazirite vow, and motivation of people in the first century.
Sure. But we know that it's because in the Torah, it's a way for someone to, in a nutshell, this is my short answer. The Nazirite vow, it's a man or a woman, remember, so it's not gender specific, can for a short, limited duration of time acquire the status of holiness according to the Torah that is basically equal to that of a high priest.
So here's the interesting.
In other words, it would be a pious act of worship and of dedication of a time to enjoy a special privilege that is in the Torah itself, male or female alike, and enjoy a status of holiness that is special, and God saw fit to put that in the Torah.
One of the things that I think of automatically, and this I could be way off on this, but we talked a couple weeks ago about baptism, and somebody was saying, I've been baptized several times. Should I get baptized again? When is it appropriate to get baptized again? I think that when the temple was standing, you didn't, you went out, you got baptized in the Jordan River or whatever by Yochanan the baptizer. Well, if you wanted to rededicate your life after that, you didn't go get baptized again. You did a Nazirite vow. That's kind of what I think of. It's like a way of,
you could maybe do that.
A way of dedication to the Lord that's extreme. And the reason that it's extreme is because I think that the way that I've read the text, and maybe I'm wrong on this too, but the way that I've read the text is, once you're done with your Nazirite vow, you shave your entire body. You don't just shave your head. And I think a lot of people think you take the razor, you shave your head. No, you shave your entire body. Have you ever seen somebody who has shaved their eyebrows off and they're walking around with no eyebrows? They look weird. So if you think of somebody who's just totally shaved head to toe,
sure.
It's an extreme.
It's extreme. They've separated themselves from major communal events such as celebration. They're not drinking wine. So if they're at a party, they're not drinking wine, and they're not going to go near the dead. So their participation in mourning and funeral, etc. So yeah, it's kind of if you could say an asceticism that is actually though set forth as kosher.
Oh man, Paul, why'd you delete that?
Oh, what?
Sorry.
I'm not seeing the thing, so that's all right. Anyway, good question on the vows.
Paul asked when Yeshua says that did he basically take a Nazirite vow when he says he would abstain from drinking wine? This is, he's getting into my realm now, which is something that I really like, because
that's a good question. There's a lot of good discussion around the question is what, and that gets, one source, of course, albeit it's later in the Mishnah, what is the minimal utterance required for someone to be obligated now as a Nazirite?
So can I tell you what my take is on this? Because this is actually part of my thesis. I've written extensively. I think I've written probably 10 to 15 pages now on what Yeshua is trying to abstain from when he says, I will not drink of it again until it's in the kingdom. Because my take on it is that because what happens in Luke, he abstains from drinking, he abstains.
Yeah.
And then he drinks again, or at least he blesses it and gives it to his disciples again. And there's a lot of people who like to read the rabbinic text back into the first century will say, oh, well, this was this cup, or this was this cup. That wasn't around in the first century. Even Daryl Bach says that, Dr. Daryl Bach says that it was probably the precursor to the 4 cups of wine at the Passover Seder. Right, yeah. I disagree with him thoroughly on that. I think that what he's saying in the whole thing is that I will not celebrate Passover again until I do it with you in the kingdom. In other words, the ceremonial aspects of this meal that are going on, this ceremony, I won't do it again until I do it with you in the kingdom. And the reason that I think that there's multiple reasons that we can see this, because he actually abstains twice. He doesn't just abstain once. He abstains once after he eats, and whether or not that's the lamb or just the meal in general, it doesn't matter because the lamb was part of it. But he says, I will not eat again until I'm in the kingdom with you. And then he drinks the wine after the meal, and that's when he abstains from the wine, right? But then he has wine again. In John, he's up on the cross, and they try to give him sour wine, and he rejects it. And then they try to give it to him again, and he accepts it. So he drinks wine after that. So I think that it has to be that he's talking about the ceremonial aspects. And he even introduces the cup with the term fruit of the vine, which I think even in the first century was representative of a ceremonial cup of wine. Okay, now we're off on a totally different...
Good. Oh, good stuff. Good questions.
Yeah, that was good. He retracted it. He said it seemed like a dumb question. Not a dumb question at all.
That's not a dumb question. That's a really good question.
It's one that I've pulled my hair out.
I mean, you could say that. What is... like you could look in 1 Samuel, when Hannah has Shmuel, right? When he's born or when she's pregnant,
right? She
basically says a Nazirite vow kind of oath. And then Elizabeth with John the Baptist, right? She's told that he's going to be a Nazirite, right? Basically, more or less, by the angel. That's not her decision.
So another part to the now we're getting back into
But those both technically might be lifelong Nazirites. So that's a different type of Nazirite than the temporal vow given in the Torah.
Joachim Jeremiah, who wrote probably what is still considered probably the foremost work on Jesus in the Last Supper, and that's the name of his book, Jesus in the Last Supper, by Joachim Jeremiah. He posits that Yeshua abstained from the entire meal and all of the cups from the very beginning, that he fasted.
He just
the whole
watched
time.
them all.
Yeah, he watched them all eat, and there's reasons that he supposes this, but they all fall very flat to me. And the biggest reason why is because it's commanded in the Torah. You shall eat the lamb with bitter herbs. So you're telling me that right before Yeshua died, the last thing that he did right before he died was not do the commandment of the Torah? Yeah, right. I just don't buy it. Anyway.
Good.
Okay.
Wow.
Let's move on. Let's go to Revelation.
We had 2 different emails the same week.
Right.
Concerning, I don't know if they were both emails, but they were both people reaching out to us about a different facet of Revelation. So we thought we'd put those together.
Okay. We were going to talk about one of these last week. This one, so I actually named the show after this. One of the things that is actually difficult for me to do is name the show each week.
Yeah, because we talk about so much stuff.
I know. I don't like what am I supposed to name?
And then for
week?
people later, they'll like email, "Hey Rob, what show did you guys talk about?" I'm like, "Ask Caleb."
Yeah. So interestingly enough, if people don't realize this, I try to database every single one of the shows that we do, and I link it with keywords to be able to search for what we've talked about. Now I'm always behind by about 10 shows, and then after 10 shows go by, then I'll go back and I'll try to catch up in my database. But I have about 120 shows right now database, so
Cool.
I can pretty much tell you what we've talked about in every show. Okay. You guys affirm that Yeshua is... So this comes from the question of... The same person asked the question a week or two, I think 2 weeks ago, about firstborn of all creation, right? And we talked about what that means, firstborn of all creation, whether or not this means that Yeshua is created or not. So this person says, you guys affirm that Yeshua is co-equal and co-eternal. But in this verse from Revelation, it looks like he was the beginning of Yahweh, God, Elohim, Elohim's creation. Am I reading it wrong, or is there a translation issue? What am I missing here? I would appreciate your input. And the verse that is being referenced here is Revelation 3:14. I'll read it in the they give you the KJV version, which we'll take that. And it says, "And unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, these things saith the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God." And if you look in the context, it's clearly a reference to Yeshua. And so the first thing that we would do is obviously go to the Greek. Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, arche, tes,
Right.
and this is the word actually. So I basically focus on this word, arche, which is, and I learned this from Rob because he was my Greek teacher. Arche can mean beginning, but it can also mean ruler. Right. Arche synagogue would be the ruler of the synagogue, or
Right,
the.
right.
So I actually take this verse. I think, and if you look in the Net Bible, and which I haven't pulled up here, but let's look in the Net Bible real quick, because I think that they actually have some good notes on this, if I remember correctly. Where am I? Revelation 3:14. So I take it as a ruler of the creation of God. That's the way that I take it. And net. Sorry, I should have had this already pulled up.
That's all right.
I don't actually have any of my net notes here. That's odd. I wonder what's going on with my Accordance Bible software. Anyway, basically, this can be translated in one of three ways, and I think that the proper translation for this would be the ruler of the creation of God. And remember, when we talked about beginning of all creation, or the firstborn of all creation, this means that he inherits everything, right? Yeshua did not think it necessary to retain his position with God, but emptied himself and coming in the likeness of a man. And when he's on earth, what happens? He gives up a lot of his attributes, right? He's constrained to a body. He says that no one knows the time except for, the not even the Son, only the Father. I'm paraphrasing. And then he says, Father, glorify me as I was before. In other words, give me back the power. And I think that now Yeshua knows the time and the hour because he knows all things now, right? He's been glorified. And so I think when it says the ruler of the creation of God, in other words, he's been given back this power. He's been given back the inheritance of the Father, which is his glory. He's been given his glory back. What would you say to that, Rob?
Yeah, the word arche is. I'm hearing an echo of my voice now, Caleb. I'm not sure why. That's weird. Oh, it just went away. Arche does mean beginning. Like, for example, in the Gospel of John, enarche, right? Or even the Greek Torah, Bereshit is translated enarche, arche in the dative. So beginning is an appropriate translation often for arche. But if you look at, it's also used in parallel with firstborn, like in the Greek Torah, talking about Reuben at the end of Genesis 49, where he says, "You are the first of my strength," right? The Rishon, Oni, I think. That word Rishon is translated as arche, and it's in a poem. It's in a song, right? Genesis 49. So it's in parallel with firstborn. And we see it also. We see the same word used in Colossians chapter 1.
Right, 1:15 and 18. So Gary was actually nice enough to post the net note for me. And once again, I'm not sure what's going on with my. I probably need to update.
Oh, good. Okay, so yeah,
but it says it says note or the beginning of God's creation or the ruler of God's creation. From a linguistic standpoint, all three meanings of arche are possible. The term is well attested in both the Septuagint, Genesis 40, verse 13, 21, and 41:13, and intertestamental Jewish literature, 2 Maccabees 4:10 and 50, as meaning ruler or authority. Some have connected this passage to Paul's statement in Colossians 1:15 and 18, which described Christ as arche and it's really small. Prototokos.
Yeah, that's the firstborn.
That's the firstborn. There we go. And so it looks like that's the term arche has been understood as either beginning or ruler.
Right, and the parallels there in Colossians 1 is kephale, which is Rosh. He's the head, right? He's the firstborn. He's the right. This is all sorts of kind of metaphorical or poetic language used to rally around Yeshua's glory, right?
Right.
So yeah, good question.
Okay, and finally we have one from Lois. This
Oh
is
yeah,
good.
Lois's one is also, now she shared a question from someone else. And it pertains to Revelation, was it 13:8, where if you read in the King James or the New King James, it mentions the lamb slain from the foundations of the world. And I actually have it memorized that way, lamb slain from the foundation of the world. But the question is about, well, why do modern translations such as ESV, NASB, the Net Bible change the wording so that it's from the book or written from the foundation of the world in the book of the Lamb or something like that?
So should we read her comment? She says,
Sure.
if the book of the Lamb was written before the foundation of the world, would that not include the idea of the Lamb being slain as well? Or is the suggestion that the book of the Lamb existed before the foundation of the world with the names of the elect written in it? But at that point, it wasn't sure that the Lamb would in fact be slain.
No, wait. You're reading that's my reply.
Oh, okay. Now I understand why I was so confused. I grabbed the wrong comment.
That was my reply because I typed a reply. So we're also giving a verbal discussion.
I was wondering why in the world I was so confused on this question. Okay, do you have her question?
Yeah, I thought I forwarded it with you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
The question basically is this: in Revelation 13:8, does quote the phrase "from the foundation of the world"? Does that modify lamb? The lamb slain from the foundation of the world, or does it modify the names written from the foundation of the world? So in other words, in the middle of Revelation 13:8, we have this phrase from the foundation of the world, and we need to know what's it talking about. There seems to be two candidates in the structure. It could be the names written from the foundation of the world, or it could be modify the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So is it talking about names being written or the lamb being slain? And so the question was not challenging the idea of the cross not being wasn't suggesting that this is evidence that maybe the cross was a second thought. That's not the intent of the email. The email is just really literally about the Greek phrase, and why is the shift between, for example, the King James version and maybe some other older ones versus the NASB, the Net, the ESV, that put it on that it's the names written.
Right.
And it's a fair topic of discussion, because there is another place in Revelation, I think it's in chapter 17, where it says the book written from the foundation of the world, where the lamb is not mentioned there, or the lamb being slain is not mentioned. So the idea then is this weird to think? I mean, should we run to the one? Should we run to the NASB and the ESV on this and abandon the King James reading? So again, just to clarify, we're not talking about a textual difference in the Greek underlying. We're talking about how that Greek is being brought into English by these, and there's kind of a fork in the road here. Is there one reason we should cling to the newer renderings of that and away from the New King James or the King James? And I don't know. I think that John could be having it mean both.
Right, and that's
now
we
know that Yeshua literally did not suffer on the cross yet before the foundation of the world. However, when we look at Isaiah 53, for example, it's all past tense, right? We've all gone astray. The Lord put on him the punishment. Like the description of the suffering Messiah in Isaiah 53 is in the past tense.
Right.
And then even John in the Gospel of John will write, this is what he quotes Isaiah 53, and then he quotes maybe Isaiah 6. I don't remember. He quotes two passages from Isaiah. One of them is Isaiah 53. And then John in the Gospel says, this is what Isaiah wrote when he saw his glory. In other words, that Isaiah was talking about it in the past tense, but he was beholding Yeshua's glory, even though in chronological time, Yeshua hadn't suffered yet.
Right.
And so it takes us into that realm of the lamb being slain from the foundation of the world is okay for me. And it's also okay that the names are written from the foundation of the world, because in my view, which privileges the sovereignty of God as a core or an umbrella under which everything needs to be understood, that we don't have to bring the time in there. We have to understand that this has to do with the eternal counsel of the Lord, right, with himself in terms of creation and redemption. What do you think, Caleb?
I think you're right. Actually, once again, going back to the idea that I think coming from a sovereignty view, this gets into stuff that us as humans can't fully understand, because God lives outside of time and space, right? So from our point of view, everything is linear and in time, and therefore we have to think of it in time. And so I think it's almost impossible for us to think outside of time. What is the beginning of the world for God? Well, the beginning of the world is the end of the world if he's outside of time, right? He sees it all. I mean, it's like holding, can you hold time in your hands? Well, we can't, but God can. So when he sees all of it. So if the lamb is slain at this point and and judgment day is at this point, he sees it at the beginning of it anyway. And I think that this is how, once again, I agree with you in terms of the sovereignty of God, and that I believe that salvation is a gift from God and faith is a gift from God, and therefore the names of those whom he would give faith to was given at the beginning of the world, which means that the names were written in the book at the beginning of the world, while at the same time, how are they written how are we declared justified? We're only declared justified through the shed blood of the Messiah, Yeshua.
Right. It's not like, and this is against the idea of Armenian, and I think it's the circles that this question came from through Lois. There was a discussion on the Armenian side of like, maybe that I don't know. It seems like the Armenian side was suggesting that maybe there was this book of life that wasn't necessarily of a slain lamb yet. Like God didn't know. There was still a book of life, and it was only after sin came into the world that then that book of life had to be the book of the life of the lamb slain or something. And to me, it doesn't make any sense that there's no coherence to that way of thinking, because like you just point out, Caleb, that why if the context of Revelation 13 is that the people who are going to follow after the beast, except for those whose name was written in the book, right, from the foundation of the world. So that have been, why are they different? Why is this group of people different than this group of people? It's because of the shed blood of Yeshua. It's because the wrath of God is not on them. They've been given the gift of the Holy Spirit for discernment and to seek to walk in God's ways, and so they don't follow after the beast.
So there's several things going on here. First of all, what we're talking about for those who are interested in this kind of thing is basically this boils down to open theism. Open theism is the idea that God doesn't know things in advance. In other words, that he has a good guess maybe, or he might be able to sway things one way or the other. But for the most part, everything is up to us to kind of determine the future and those kind of things. I was challenged on open theism recently. Somebody basically challenged me saying, well, essentially, the person didn't say this, but the essential drive of it was, well, maybe open theism is true. What open theism does is it makes God no longer omniscient. In other words, God is not all-knowing. He's not all, which takes power away from God, which means that God's not in control. And if God's not in control, then we're in a whole heap of trouble. Someone in the chat room asks this question. They say, Robin or Caleb, since we are now on Revelation 13, this may be off topic. I've been studying Daniel 9:27. Is this about Messiah, the Antichrist, or both? I don't have Daniel 9:27 in front of me.
We should. Well, that's gonna have to. We're gonna have to do a show.
It's gonna have to wait.
On
well,
Daniel.
what I was gonna say to this is, My father's done 9 sessions on the book of Daniel, and he addresses all of this in that series. I would encourage you to look for it on Torah Resource. Interpreting biblical prophecy is the first portion of that, and then there's interpreting Daniel's prophecy, which you can also find. And you can buy them separately if you want to. Interpreting biblical prophecy is an introduction to how we read biblical prophecy and how we can understand it. And then he takes what he teaches in the first 8 sessions of interpreting biblical prophecy, and he then applies it to a study of the book of Daniel. And I have to say, it was probably one of the more exciting things that I've videotaped of lectures of my father's that I've videotaped. It was really a very good, and to be honest with you, it's one that is not, for some reason, is not sold as much on Torah Resource as a lot of other things, which is fine, but I feel like people are missing out. It's in video or audio. I would encourage everyone. It really is an exciting thing to go through. It's very fun. I remember vividly because he gave it in the Philippines. He did that whole lecture series in the Philippines. It was the second time that we had been there, and I was videotaping. It was in a very nice hotel. And I remember I had Wi-Fi in the room, and I was trying to live tweet as fast as I could my father's lectures on Daniel 9 because I just found them very fascinating. So anyway, I'd encourage everybody to go check it out. It's very good, and it's kind of outside of the realm of something that I would even be able to. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be able to talk about it off the cuff. I would have to go back and reference my father's work on Daniel before I could even, it's such an intriguing book, right? Daniel is just, the whole thing is really, really intriguing to me, as most prophecy is. But at the same time, a lot of people get into trouble for their interpretations of. I think it's a mystery. It's like trying to explain women. I love my wife. I love my wife very much, but I'm not going to try to explain. Anyway, okay. Did I go off the cuff there too much? Have you seen that?
Bible prophecy is like women. You can't explain it.
You can't explain it, man.
You're funny.
That's how I feel. All right. Shoot us emails.
Did we? Yeah, I think we did. We covered some good material today.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, here, let's pull this one up instead. All right, guys. Comment line 253-465-3205. How many... Jessica says, women make sense to women. That's true. My wife probably has better insight into prophecy than I do. I have a feeling I'm going to get a lot of email about that women comment. I'm sorry. I just don't understand women. Okay. Comment line is 253-465-3205. 253-465-3205. And shoot us emails, cheg@TorahResource.com. cheg@TorahResource.com. And don't forget to go to Torah Resource, where you can find all sorts of wonderful things. We're off for an entire week, so we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll be pretty silent, I think, on Messiah Matters More until Rob gets back from Trinidad. But once he does, we will try to post all of those lectures there. I can't wait to hear him. Have fun in Trinidad. Please be praying for Rob as he goes. Pray for me and the rest of the staff at Torah Resource as we go to camp and all the people traveling to us, because we're going to try to do one thing in both places. That is glorify our great God and Savior, Yeshua, the Messiah. Why? Because Messiah matters.